All right. Well, continuing on from the previous uh, presentation, the Sun dynasty, uh, those who are aligned with Ahura Mazda will be rewarded on earth and in heaven. Those who will not will be punished. Uh, so basically, those on the side of truth, Hasha, will be rewarded, and those on the side of lie, drudge, punishment. But you're free to choose. So you can still see this ties to some degree, has some similarities with Judaism on into Christianity. Uh, they During this period, the Sassanid period, you have more opposition to the sacrificial system, and so it gets associated with the worship of evil divas. Uh, but it still wasn't totally abolished during this time period. All right, well, we talked about the Homa drink, uh, and that was used for the hallucinogenic to have a mystical experience with God. This was during the Sassanid period, they would do away with that. What became central in this time period was the special fire, or the purifying fire that represented Ahura Mazda. And so they would have a fire ritual that the priests would perform, the Magi would perform as an act of worship. And to this day, that is still the central thing that is used in Zoroastrianism. The Muslim conquests, which came along in the 600s and conquered Iran, and which was kind of central area for Zoroastrianism. They should have theoretically been protected as people of the book, but they would in the end they would be oppressed for their practices and called infidels and unbelievers because they didn't follow Islamic teachings. They would end up calling themselves by other names other than Zoroastrians, Zardushtans or Iranists are two names associated with them. Because of the persecution of the Middle East, they moved to Bombay and became known in India as the Parsis. So when you see the terms Parsis, especially, the other ones you don't see quite that often, but that's just to say that there are various names by which modern Zoroastrians are referred to today. So outside of Iran, there's about 200,000 Zoroastrians or Parsis, 18,000 in Iran, but they are highly persecuted to this day among the Shia majority. And they do have houses of worship, the Parsis temple, like this one here in Nairobi. But there's one in Chicago as well, along with Toronto. But they're not a very evangelistic. They don't try to spread their religion, and it stays pretty well confined within their own ethnic groups. They kind of view, if you get outside of their ethnic group, they kind of view it as a contamination of the purity of their religion, and so they don't go around evangelizing other people. If you want to see something that indicates some of the connections with the Bible, of course, the religion itself is not mentioned by name, but some kings who were possibly Zoroastrians, or at least had some understanding of Ahura Mazda, but at the same time probably weren't totally monotheistic. There's some scriptures where you see Cyrus, some with Cyrus and Artaxerxes, Darius, and you can see I list some scriptures here. You can look those up if you're interested in following up on them. But it's just an indicator that during that time period, that especially the Achaemenid period, that there would have these leaders may have understood God in a sense of Ahura Mazda. So out of all the religions connected to the Old Testament and New Testament, only Zoroastrianism remains alive. And Cyrus is called by God his Messiah or anointed one. Cyrus is called by God to be my shepherd in Isaiah as well. And so notice God's interaction with the powers that be, how much they recognized of that one God. When you read it, sometimes it looks like, well, they recognize at least something. Other times they don't seem to be. Maybe the source, Judaism may be the source of their idea of evil, Satan instead of God. Maybe angels, demons, a savior, all these things. The idea of a final resurrection, judgment, paradise, and future life. These could be influences from Judaism coming into Zoroastrianism. But Zoroastrianism was not highly accepted by Persians of the exile, so it's not likely that it did that the opposite happened, that it influenced Judaism until so Persia did not really become a Zoroastrian primarily until after the exile. But it does seem very fair to say that Judaism could have been highly influential on Zoroastrianism. So the founder basically that goes back to is Zoroaster, whose dates are 628 to 551 BC. He would have been a contemporary of Jeremiah and Daniel, in other words. He became a priest. He was known for meditation and officiating in sacrifices. He had a vision at age 30 from God, where he ascended in the head of it out of the body and stood before Ahura Mazda, and was instructed to teach what he was told from that time forward. He would end up having 6 more visions in the next 8 years, and this would become the source of what would become as the official Zoroastrianism, even though there would be some aspects of it that came with the Aryans in 1500. But this is really where it gets amalgamated into a official type of religion. He was opposed by the other priests as his teachings undercut their livelihood, thrown into prison. Later, King Hystaspas helped him out because he, as the story goes, Zoroaster healed his horse. But even though Zoroastrianism was, gaining popularity, and not all of Persia was converted, but he did have a significant following. So this is a modern day purification ceremony using the purifying fire. They believe that the elements are pure and that fire represents God's light and wisdom. So they place emphasis on ritual worship instead of focusing on central ethics of good words, good thoughts, and good deeds. So one of the sayings for them as part of their worship and what they focus on, their central ethics can be summed up in good words, good thoughts, good deeds. For Zoroastrians, they traditionally pray several times a day. Somewhere akusti, it's called, which is a chord nodded 3 times to remind them of the maxim, good words, good thoughts, good deeds. And while they're reciting these, They wrap the kutsi around outside of their sudra, which is a long white cloth shirt. And so this would be part of their ritual. They may engage in a purification ritual, such as the washing of hands, then untie and then retie the kusti while reciting prayers. So that's just some of the traditional things that go on. Prayers are primarily invocational, calling upon the celebrating Ahura Mazda and his good essence that runs through all things. Prayers are said to facing the sun, fire, or other sources of light representing Ahura Mazda's divine light and energy. So purification is strongly emphasized in Zoroastrian rituals. They focus on keeping their minds and bodies and environment pure in quest to defeat evil, Angra Mainyu. Fire is seen as the supreme symbol of purity, and sacred fires are maintained in fire temples, or what they call auguries. These fires represent the light of God, Ahura Mazda, as well as the illuminated mind, and are never extinguished. No Zoroastrian ritual or ceremony is performed without the presence of the sacred fire. And so this has become, one of the central aspects of Zoroastrianism. All right, so to end this presentation, there is a Zoroastrian creed, and this is a kind of a shortened version of it. Come to my help, Ahura Mazda. I am a Mazdasian, according to the way of Zarathustra. I firmly declare my faith. I acknowledge my faith in God's good words, well spoken. I acknowledge the faith in good deeds, well done. I acknowledge my acceptance of God, religion of Mazda, which ends strife and disarms violence, which makes us righteous and self-reliant. It is the religion of those who have been and shall be the noblest, the best, and the most sublime. The religion of Ahura Mazda was brought to us by Zarathustra. All good derives from Ahura Mazda. This is the declaration of Mazdasian religion. And so we can see this commitment, and again, it brings up the good words, good deeds, so forth, that are mentioned earlier. And so that's basic background to Zoroastrianism, and just realizing that how these monotheistic religions, though we don't study Christianity per se in here, since we should be studying that in all our other studies, but when you bring in Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Christianity and Islam, this focus on one God is a important aspect of all of those. All right, so that will conclude our presentation on Zoroastrianism. So let me get out of this. Stop.
Yes, sir. Can you tell me what enforce tracker